Good morning. This is Dion McCormick, and I want to say thank you to our very large attendance this morning. I guess we'll know the lucky winner in a little while. And I thought you would all come here for me, but it's okay. I'm not upset or anything. So, but no, thank you very much. My name's Dion McCormick, and what we're going to focus on today is we are going to have our Q&A session. It'll be at the later part of the presentation. I'm going to do a little bit more of a overview of some of the latest mobile development capabilities. And Dave, if you can just do process checks and make sure my audio is working great and we're having no problems there.
Audio sounds
We're going to
good,
talk.
and I can see your screen, so we're all set.
Excellent. Good. So, what is Alpha Anywhere? Really, we focus on our next generation mobile and web development platform, and truly it is a platform. It includes codeless development, which I want to talk about for a few moments, rich development environment for advanced requirements, and we now have the seamless mobile app generation with the PhoneGap integration, which is very smooth. I'm going to actually touch on all of these elements today. The first and foremost thing I want you to understand is that, and I know I'm preaching to the choir to a fair number of people, but what's great about Alpha is that you basically have one tool that allows you to develop for the web, a cloud-based solution, for mobile platforms such as phones or tablets. You can deploy through the web browser or now through a app deployment using the PhoneGap integration. And you can even develop desktop applications. There are a few specific instances we still have of desktop. But what's nice is once you learn the platform, basically you can sort of deploy wherever you want to and gain advantage of that and use the same skill set and the same training. Alpha is built on industry standards. What comes out of Alpha is HTML5, JavaScript, CSS, and we connect industry standard SQL databases, backend systems, .NET, and web services. So what's really good about that is as the industry progresses, your applications and your development projects will take advantage of that. In fact, one of the most interesting things at the last Worldwide Developer Conference for Apple was the fact they were stressing the fact that the new Safari JavaScript engine was 6.5 times faster than the previous one. So since we deploy via standard JavaScript, that means all of our alpha applications are going to run that much faster on the Safari mobile and Mac web browser. So as that competition heats up, it's just going to make the applications run smoother, cleaner, and better. We have a codeless development platform, and the idea behind this is that twofold. One, we want to allow our people to generate solutions quickly to get their prototypes and their first versions up and running, not spend a lot of time diving into deep code, and really produce things very quickly. But also there's another aspect of that we want to stress, is the fact that the best line of code that's ever been developed is a piece of line of code that you don't have to write, because you're never going to have a defect with it. So if the system is generating rock solid, maintenance-free code for you, then that's going to allow you to focus more of your time and energy on those unique features and capabilities that make your application special. Along with that also is a rich development environment. So if you get to a point where you need to have something special that's not really built in, you have complete control and you can dive into the development system and code to your heart's delight. And so that allows us to make sure that you're never going to be limited in terms of what you can build with Alpha Anywhere. That if you need to, you have those hooks, those tools, those capabilities to dive into it. Now, one thing that's very exciting is our new PhoneGap integration and the ability for you to take what you develop using Alpha Anywhere and with very little extra effort generate a native app that will run on iOS, Android, or Windows Mobile, or all three at the same time. And the beauty of that is that instead of having to develop all this stuff and then learn a whole new skill set to do mobile, you can now just press a button, it will upload it, make it work, and then therefore all of your training and work will work on those native applications or native environments. And what's also very exciting is through the PhoneGap API, you can gain access to all the native functionality of these mobile devices, such as geolocation, accelerometers, notification, vibration, all these things. So it really allows you to enhance your application when it's out in the wild on a mobile platform. So that's just a quick and dirty overview. And what I'd like to do and focus on today is how to actually build a real simple mobile application. And again, I know some people have seen this already, but I think it'll be a good refresher, but we can focus on some of the unique capabilities there. So Dave, if everything's coming across A-OK, we'll go ahead and move to that next section.
Sounds good. You
And
can
I
go
just want
ahead.
to make sure.
Hmm.
Okay, good. I just want to do a process check to make sure I'm not talking to myself out here. So, okay, so which happens a lot, much more than you would think. So, yeah, I'm used to it. But for this purpose, I want to talk to everybody. So, I'm in my mobile or my development environment, and I have a sample application here. I've already created a connection string. And in this case, this connection string is connecting to a MySQL database, but that could be, actually, let me go ahead and show you that again. But that connection string could be actually connected to um, access databases for legacy purposes, DBF or DB2, Excel, SQL Server, QuickBooks. So what's nice is that Alpha has basically a full set of connections so that it abstracts those data sources. And in fact, the two new ones that are very exciting are also the ability to go against Amazon Web Services and Azure for file storage. So therefore, you don't have to worry about all the APIs and complexities. You have this nice interface to it. So for the purposes of our demonstration today, I'm actually using a MySQL database on there. So what I want to do is I'm using the Northwinds database. And so I'm going to start by creating a simple sort of customer relationship or CRM solution, sort of an account management solution for a mobile platform. So I'm going to start with that right now with a mobile web component. And I'm going to start with my UX control. And what a UX control is actually, think of it as a form for Alpha. So I'm opening it up. Now, one of the other cool things about Alpha is that they understand, especially when you're starting out, to kind of give you some templates so that you don't have to start with a blank page. So for today, I'm going to start with this template called a panel navigator with header and 3 panel cards. And this allows me to jumpstart my application and start focusing immediately on my sort of content and capability versus all of the other things that go around with it. And I have a whole series of different ones that are available for me to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and use that on a panel navigator and header. I'm going to click OK. And now it's opened up my, basically my form system. So what you're going to see on the left-hand side here are all of my different controls that I can add to my user interface. In the middle is the actual structure of my user interface. And on the right are sort of the properties for each element to it. Now, Alpha ships with a very rich set of controls, things like mapping, charting, trees, calendars. I'm going to focus on a couple of those today, but realize that a lot of these core functional sort of user interface elements already exist, so you don't have to create them yourself. But you're not limited, and you can create your own if you need to. So I'm going to go ahead and just run this to show you what this looks like. First, I'll go ahead and save this. I'm going to save that so we have it saved on my drive here. I'm going to go into my working preview. And I'm going to show you first and foremost is built into the system is a simulator. So I can immediately see my mobile application running in a simulated environment just to kind of get my first level of working. And then I'll talk in a few minutes about how I can actually then do a little bit better testing with my actual mobile device. But you'll see I have basically a phone kind of application. I've got my initial panel card that's showing. I've got a button here. When I click on that button, it takes me to a second panel card, sort of a second set of content. And then when I click on my next button, it takes me to my third content. So you'll notice that the system is handling all the navigation, the animation, and the other pieces to it. Now, nothing super exciting there, so let me go back into my design environment. And you'll see right here that we have this thing called a panel navigator. And in that panel navigator, I have a series of panel cards. And think of it as each of these cards kind of goes into view and out of view as you desire so that the user can see different content. And that's the paradigm we use for developing mobile and now web-based applications. So instead of just a simple static panel card, what I want to do is on that first panel, I want to bring up a list of customers. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my first panel card here. I'm going to delete this static text, and I'm going to add a very special control called a list control. And I'm going to insert that into my user interface. And I'm going to call this list customers. And so now I have a list that's going to show up here. So I select that list, I double click on it. I can populate that list from different areas. Today I'm going to populate it from my SQL database, but I could go after DBF tables. I could put static data. I could also put custom data where I can literally call like a web service to collect data and bring it into it. So it's a very flexible control that allows you to consume data from many different systems, whether they're databases or back-end systems, and very, very powerful. You can essentially do any kind of data source you want. For today, I'm going to click on SQL, and then it gives me a new panel. I'm going to select my connection string, and all that really is a pointer to my, in this case, a MySQL database. So now that I've pointed to that, I'm going to actually say, okay, I want to bring back some fields from the table. The table I want to select from is a customers table, and I click customers. And then I click field, and it's going to bring up my field list. Now, one thing that's very important is after I've selected my connection string, it actually investigates and brings back the information about that database. So I don't have to remember any arcane-like codes. I don't have to write SQL. Basically, I can kind of point and click and say, what information do I want to show? So I'm collecting information from the table customers, and I want to go ahead and select all of the fields, and I'll show you why I do that in a few minutes. But I'm going to go ahead and select all of these fields. So now what it's going to do is it's going to bring back all those fields. You'll notice that as I'm doing that, underneath the covers, it's actually building a select statement, a SQL statement to collect from that. Now, if I wanted to, I could add filtering and ordering, such as, like, for instance, with this customer, maybe it's a salesman system and they only get a certain territory data or a certain region or something like that. So I have full control over that, and I can also sense who is logging onto the system with our security framework and be able to use that information to limit to just records that they may care. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. So now that I've got the data that I want to use, I'm going to go to the list layout field or tab up here, and I'm going to click on that. And now I'm going to say, you know what? I want to show in my list my company name, contact name, and contact title. So I've kind of selected what data is coming into my list, and now I'm saying, how do I want to represent that to the user? And I'm going to click OK. So now I've set up a simple database connected list. You'll notice no code has been generated or has been entered. It's all been generated for me. Now when I go back into my working preview, you're going to notice, oh, I want to do one other thing. Excuse me. I want it to fill the container. That's a little button right here that allows it to consume that whole container. So when I go into my working preview, you're going to notice now that it's automatically built the user interface for me. It's actually brought the data back, and it's now handling all of the swipe gestures that you would normally have on a mobile platform, including selecting and highlighting things. So the system has built into it a lot of really powerful sort of behaviors and things so that I can focus on just getting the functionality right instead of having to code thing. Including, for instance, if I click here, it actually sorts on those different fields. So it's taking care of all the sorting logic and everything associated with it. Now, this is kind of a little bit of a clunky user interface for my mobile application. So I kind of want to pretty that up. So I'm going to go back into my design environment. I'm going to go ahead and open up my customer list. And I'm going to go, you'll notice I'm going to go to my list properties. So I'm going to adjust some properties on the list to make it do exactly what I want it to do. And I'm going to scroll down here, and you'll notice that I have something called layout type. And what layout type is basically, how's it going to lay it out? In our first case, we used column. But what I would like to use is something called freeform, which gives me a lot more control over the user interface. Now that I've selected freeform, I'm going to go to list layout, and you'll notice I have a blank canvas. And I could just go ahead and basically select fields and put them in there I want, because these are the data fields that are available, but I want to go ahead and use a predefined template. So I click that, and now I have a whole bunch of predefined templates that have been shipped with Alpha that kind of help me kickstart my user interface. And I'm going to go ahead and select this one. It's level 1, level 2, and I'm going to click OK. It's going to ask me a couple quick questions, and what I want to do is I want to put in the company name for level 1 and put in the contact name for level 2. And when I click OK, you'll notice it's done something for it. all it's really done is put in a little bit of HTML code to sort of lay out how I want it to look on the screen. Remember, I talked about the fact that we use industry standard HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, and this is an example of that. You'll notice that I have basically just a layout structure for my user interface, and then it's inserting the dynamic elements from the database in here using this special curly bracket capability. So I could modify it any way I want to. But I'm going to go ahead and accept that and use this as it is here. So I'm going to click OK, and click Save. Now when I go into my working preview, you're going to see we now have a much nicer looking user interface. Again, no coding necessary. I have the ability, but I'm going to do there. And it takes care of all of my swipe gestures and my selection. But you'll notice that looks a lot nicer. It's a company name with a person's name behind each one of those. So it handles there. So nothing super exciting on our application so far, but what we're going to do next is what I'd like to have the ability for the salesperson in the field to do is to select a item and then show them the detail for that item and allow them to edit it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that next. Dave, just want to make sure process check that everything's coming through loud and clear and the screen's showing okay.
It sure is.
Confirm that.
Yep.
Great, excellent. And so I'm going to go back into my design environment. So remember in panel card number 1, the first panel card, we're just showing this list. But I have a second panel card. So what I want to do is when I click on an item in the list of customers, I want it to load up my detail, and then I want it to show this panel card. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to panel card number 2. I'm going to get rid of this static text. I'm going to go ahead and put in a container, and I'll explain why I do that in a moment. But most importantly is next I'm going to put in a button. So I want to have a button on that second page. So I'm going to click Other Controls and click Button. And you notice I can put images, hyperlinks. I have complete control over how my user interface looks and feels. So I'm going to click Button, and I'm going to call that button Save Edit. And that's the button that's going to, in a moment, I'll add a behavior that when I edit something, I'm going to go ahead and save that edit. But the next thing I want to do is insert my detail fields in here. So I'm going to go to my data controls. I'm going to click on text box. And so I'm going to use text boxes for my data controls. Now, normally, if I wanted to, I could just start typing in that controls. But again, Alpha gives me some shortcuts to make my life a little easier. So I'm going to click on Populate List from a Table. I'm going to select my connection string. This is connecting to MySQL. I'm going to select my table, which is customers. And I want to go ahead and bring back all the fields because I want to be able to edit all the different fields. But in this case, I'm going to ignore the data binding because I'm using a different technique to do the editing, and I'll show you that in a moment. So basically, I'm saying I want to connect to my database. I want to bring back all those different, from the table customers, I want to bring back all those fields. And when I click OK, you'll notice that it's auto-generated from the database table, these fields. So it did that for me automatically. I didn't have to type all these in. It knows what kind of data is in there. For instance, this is all character data, but it could be dates and times and things like that. And I click OK. In a moment, you'll see that it basically creates all of my fields for me, so I don't have to create and put those in there. Saves a lot of time, allows me to get that first prototype up and running in a matter of a few minutes and not have to do it, but give me all the control for going back and modifying it later. So at this point in time, I have my data fields in there, but I want to link these sort of detail fields to the list of customers. And I also want to add the behavior so that when someone clicks on the list of customers, it shows me that second panel card. So to do that, I go into list of customers. I go to my list properties, and this is a new feature. It's called Has Detail View. It's a magic little button. And you'll notice when I click that button, you'll notice up top that a new tab has appeared called Detail View. So basically what I'm doing is connecting this list of customers to my detail fields. So once I've selected Has Detail View, I can now click on Detail View, and now I can set up the information on how I want to do that. So the first thing I want to do is I could literally map the columns in my list to each of those individual fields, but I'm going to use a shortcut. So instead of a field map, I'm going to select container, and then I'm going to select container 4. And that's the container here that surrounds all of my detail fields. So now the detail view knows, okay, map the columns in the list of customers to these fields in here, so I don't have to individually map every single field. And these can get fairly complex, so you could have 20, 30, 40 fields on a page. Now the next thing I want to do is, now that I've told the sort of the list where the detail fields are, I want to set my synchronization policy. And this is very important. I'll come back and touch on this again, but I'm going to go ahead and click here, and I want to go ahead and click what's called Perform Client to Server Synchronization whenever user saves edits to a row in a list. So that means if I save the detail information, I want the system to go ahead and push that data back to my database for me automatically. And then I'm going to come back and talk about how do we do that in a disconnected environment. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now I've connected my detail fields to my list. I've told it to map those fields there, and I've told it to synchronize there. The only other thing I need to do is I got to click on this table properties, and I'm going to tell it the primary key is customer ID. So it knows in the detail fields what's holding that primary ID. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable insert and delete. I'm only really going to do an update. I could, and all the hooks and the buttons are there to allow me to enter in new records, but for the purposes of our demonstration today, I'm just going to do allow update. Okay, so now that's successful, and I'm happy about that in terms of I've got the ability to connect my list of customers to a detail view to be able to enter in and save data. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now I want to do one other thing. When a person clicks on this list of customers, I want to add a behavior that will show this second panel card. So to do that, I go into list of customers. I then go down to, or go to my list properties, and I'm going to scroll down here, and I have an area in here called JavaScript runtime. And this is where I can add behaviors to my list. For instance, if someone clicks on an item, right-clicks on it, double-clicks on it, things along those. In fact, there are many more events that are available. But for our purposes, when a person clicks on the list of customers, I want to fire off an event that's going to show the second panel card. So I click here to add that there. I'm going to create a new action JavaScript. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call show detail. Okay, and I'm going to edit that action. So I'm basically, now this is a very important aspect too, is that if you think about it, any behaviors that happen on a mobile or a web platform, that's done with JavaScript. JavaScript is what gives user interfaces their interactivity and behavior. And normally you would have to learn a bunch of JavaScript to do that. But in this case with Alpha, Alpha has added something called Action JavaScript. And basically it's a JavaScript builder. So in this case, I'm going to click Add a New Action. You're going to see I have a ton of different pre-built actions built into the system, things that will allow my life to be so much simpler. But for purposes for our presentation today, I'm going to do what's called a panel action. So I'm going to search for panel actions. And I type in panel up here, and you're going to notice that I have panel actions there. And then I'm going to double click on that. And the action I want to do is set the active panel to be panel card number 2. So basically I'm saying when a person clicks on this button, I want to put panel card number 2, which has my detail fuse, front and center in front of the user there. And I also want to animate that so it looks really cool when I do it. And I click OK. So you'll notice panel actions now has been put in there. And if I go ahead and click this View JavaScript here, you're going to notice that it's actually showing me what is the JavaScript that's being built by Action JavaScript. And what's powerful about this is twofold. One is as you get kind of used to using the system, you're going to start learning JavaScript, and you'll be able to start looking at how the system is built with Action JavaScript, and you can literally copy and paste and do your own edits. So Action JavaScript kind of accelerates your education on there, but also makes it easy for you to add interactivity to your applications without having to learn JavaScript first. And so it's very powerful there. So I click OK, I save it. I'm going to run this JavaScript action. So now what I've done is I've done two things through that whole process. I've connected my list of customers to my detail view, and I've shown it so that when I click on it, it'll go to the panel card. So let me go back into my working preview. And now I've got my nice list. And when I click on an item here, you're going to notice it takes me to the second panel card, and you'll notice that the details for that that list item are populated here. So I can go back here. I can go to, let's say, Antonio here, and you'll notice that Antonio's information is put on there. So as you can see, so far I've not typed a single piece of code, and I now have an interactive, but I still need to save the data. So you'll notice I have my save button up here, but when I click on it, nothing's happened because I haven't added that behavior. So I'm going to go back into my design environment. I'm going to click on my Save Edit button. And you'll notice when I did, I can see all the different properties that I have available for that. And I have an enormous amount of customization I can do to make it look and act exactly what I want. But in this case, we have down here the touch, mouse, and pointer events. And so when a person clicks on that button, I want to add the behavior that says save these edits to the list. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this button right here. It opens up my Action JavaScript builder, what you saw in a few moments. I click Add New Action. In this case, it's a list control action since we're saving the data to the list. So I select that there. I click OK. The action I want to do is a list detail view action, and that is, so the list I'm going to point to is list of customers. You'll notice I could have multiple lists on my user interface, so I'm not limited just to a single list. And the detail view action I want to do is something called submit detail view edits to the list. So when the user clicks on that button, I'm going to go ahead and submit the data they've entered into here to that list. And I click OK. It's added my action in there. If I wanted to see the action JavaScript, you'll notice that I open it up and it's going to show me that action JavaScript so I can learn how to use from it and code my own JavaScript if I want to. Now the other thing I want to do is when they click this save button, not only do I want to save it, but I want to go back to the first panel card. So with action JavaScript, I can add a second action here, and I can do a panel action, and this will become a little bit of deja vu here. I'm going to set the active panel to be my panel card number 1. So when they click on that button, it's going to not only save the data, but take me back to my panel card. So I click OK, click Save. Now we're ready to go. Now we're cooking with gas here. So we go in here, and we have our editor here. I click on Test Person, and let's say I change the region to 1, 2, 3, 4. I now click the Save button, and you'll notice in a moment that it went back. You saw like a little sort of wait thing. Okay, and I've gone to Test Company here, and I've clicked on there, and I have adjusted that. So when I go back into that record, you're going to see the region has been updated here. I can edit that again, go back to save that edit, and I'm at that point there. So now I've added the ability for me to edit records and do that. And I can click on any of the different records and do my editing to this, and it will do an immediate update there. Now what's going on here, very importantly, is that since I set my synchronization policy to save directly back to the server, when I click this button right here, any changes here are saved and sent back to the server. But you know, this is a mobile world, and you don't always have connections out there. Even the best environments have scenarios. You're in a factory warehouse, you're out at an oil field, and you don't have that connection. So how do you handle the situation where you have a mobile development and you want to be able to be disconnected but still have the user have the behaviors and be able to do what they need to do to complete their job? So with that in mind, let me go ahead and show you this extremely powerful technique. So currently, when I click Save Edit, it saves the data directly back into it since I set my synchronization policy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my list of customers. I'm going to go to my detail view here, and I'm going to go to my synchronization policy. and I'm going to disable that perform client to server synchronization. So it's not going to be automatic at this point in time. And I click OK, and I go back out. Now what I want to do here is I want to go ahead and go to my header, and I'm going to add a button. Let me go ahead and go to other controls. And I'm going to add and I'm going to call this save to server. Okay? And I'm going to add a behavior where when I save the edits here, it's going to save the data to my list locally. And then when I click on this button, it's going to take that data and then send it to the server. So I'm going to click to save to server. I go down to my click event. I click there. I'm going to add a new action. And that action is, it's a list control action. So I'm going to select that from my many different actions. The action I want to do is a list detail view action. And I'm going to point to my list of customers. And then in this case, what I want to do is submit the list edits to the server. And I click OK and click Save. So this button right here, when you edit any data, it's going to save it to the list, and then it's going to store it locally. Then when I click this Save to the server, it's actually going to persist it. So let's go ahead and look and see how that operates. So I'm going to go into my working preview. Everything looks the same here. I'm going to go ahead and click on Alfred's here, and I'm going to change the region code, and I'm going to click Save the Edit. Now you're going to know something a little different. When I did that, you'll notice that there's a little flag there up in the right-hand corner. It's a little orange-like triangle. And if I actually click another item, you're going to notice that it's up there on there. And in fact, let me go ahead and edit this one also and save that. So you'll notice now that I have these little indicators. And what that tells me is that those rows have been edited but have not been saved back to my server. So therefore, all that information is kind of living locally. But you'll notice now that I've added this new button to save to server. When I click that, in a moment, you're going to notice that those indicators went away. And now the data that was edited in these records has been persisted back to my original data source, in this case, the SQL database. So the beauty of that is I can be out in the field and I can be editing things, I can be changing information, everything's working fine, I'm not having to adjust anything, and it's working great. And then when I get back in cell connection or capability, I can click this Save to Server. By the way, the system can automatically detect if it has a network connection, and if it does, automatically process for you and allow you to do that. And you'll know something very, very important. Nowhere in this situation did I have to write any code. The system did that for me. And so therefore it's handling all the complexity of storing that data locally and then figuring out how to persist it. It has a full set of hooks that are in there that are very powerful that allow you to trap, for instance, let's say I'm working on Alfred's and I change Alfred here, and then Joe down the street has the same mobile application and they change Alfred's also. It actually has the hooks that allow me to say, okay, here are the different changes, and if we need to, pick the one you want to change. So it handles all that concurrency and caching all the things available for me. So extremely powerful, very easy to use. Most other systems require you to handle that on your own, meaning you have to write all the code to do all that local storage and persisting, etc. So this saves me an enormous amount of time for me to be able to build disconnected solutions. So I want to show two other real quick things in my demonstration. It'll only take another 5 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session. But Dave, just again, process check, everything coming through. You're able to hear me, and the screen looks good.
Yep, it's okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go back into my design. You'll notice that I don't have the prettiest user interface known to mankind. It's a little bit clunky there. So I want to do two things to make it look a little differently, a little nicer. So the first thing I'm going to do is in this container, I've got kind of a vertical orientation of just fields. I want to use a new feature that's very powerful. So I'm going to go into my subtype of container. And the way to think of a container is it's sort of an invisible control that kind of tells what to do with the inside controls inside of it. I'm going to collect what's called absolute layout. So now you'll notice the color has changed on this, and it's still surrounding those fields. And I'm going to go ahead and say this has a background image. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Has Background Image, and I'm going to click background image, and I'm going to select something that I've scanned. And I went ahead and scanned a very simple insurance policy form, sort of how you would fill out your form for insurance. Now that I've set that as the background, I'm going to click on this button here, which is absolute positions for controls. So I click on there. You'll notice now that it's brought up my form that I've scanned. So this could be any kind of form that you want, and you could scan it. And you'll notice on the left-hand side, I have my fields here, and then I have my form here. So first thing I'm going to do is take this button, which is my Save Edits, and I'm going to click that there. Then I'm going to take my company name, and I'm going to go ahead and put that here. And I'm going to take the address field, and I'm going to put that here. And as you'll notice, I'm basically dragging and dropping in an absolute, so it's like a back to a desktop form builder kind of paradigm that I'm using right there. And let's go ahead and put the contact name right here for there. So instead of me messing with HTML and CSS and layouts and stuff like that, I'm simply clicking and dragging. And I click OK. I save this. Now when I go into my working preview, and I'm going to go ahead and adjust. Let's say this is a tablet because this is a much bigger form. I'm going to change it to my tablet environment. So I'm going to go ahead and click on one of my items. You're going to notice now instead of that vertical list, I now have a layout where all of the information is done right here in the fields, including buttons. It could be date, it could be any kind of control that you want to drop down boxes, check boxes, etc. But one thing that's important for you to know is that all the behaviors and everything else I did all persist. So it just is a different way of showing it to the user. So I'm able to actually go in there and click and edit things and do everything, but it's in a normal kind of field. So if you have any clients that do anything with forms, this is an extremely rapid way for you to take their form-based processes and turn them into mobile applications in a matter of, as you can see, within hours doing this capability. Now, the other thing I want to show you is that we have a very rich set of controls. So I'm going to go back into the design environment, and I'm going to go to panel card number 3. And with panel card number 3, what I want to do is I'm going to add what's called a map control. So I'm going to add in a map control. And so Alpha ships with a complete set of very rich sort of user interface capabilities. So I have a map control there. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want that control to fill the container. And I'm going to go ahead and add a new button here to my detail page. So I'm going to go to Other Controls and select Button. And then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to type Map It. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to add a behavior to that button that when you click on it, it's going to show a map of these of this person's information. So I'm going to click on here. I'm going to add a new action. As we talked about before, Alpha ships with a whole bunch of pre-made components and action JavaScript, so I don't have to learn how to code Google Maps. And I click OK. The map I want to work on is map. And the action I want to do is something called add a marker to the map, because all I want to do is add a marker. And when I do that, it opens up some other aspects. Now I could type in an explicit address, but in this case, what I want to do is I want to get the map information, the address, from controls on my component. And the controls I want to use are, in this case, address, city, country, and let's say postal code. So what it's going to do is when it renders this map marker, it's going to actually look at what the current fields are on my user interface and use that data. And I click OK. The other thing I want to do is, since my button is on the second panel card, I actually want to show them go to the third panel card. So I'm going to add a new action, and now it's getting redundant, but you'll probably know what I'm doing right here. I'm adding in a set the active panel to go to panel card number 3. So it's going to render my map and put my marker on there and immediately show me that map. And I click OK. Now there's one other little thing. Since I'm using an absolute layout here, I want to go into that control and I want to say, I want to put that map button, say, right up here. And so it shows up on that screen. And by the way, this could have been like a little map icon or something like that. It doesn't have to be a button. So I click OK. I save it. I go back into my working preview. And I'm going to go ahead and select one of these right here. You'll notice I have my new button right here. I click map it, and you'll notice that it's actually rendered a map for me. Actually, did I do that right? Let's go ahead. Oh, I might have to have the actual controls visible. So let me bear there. Oh no, I did a, there you go. It's demo time. Um, let me go into my absolute control and make sure I have on there city, region. I think it's has to be visible on the screen for me if that works. So let me do that real quick. And country. Okay. I save that okay. Click save. I go into my working preview. Click on this one and I map it. Yeah, there we go. So you're going to see right now it's brought up a Google map with all the Google map. It takes care of all the scrolling and moving. It's put that map marker on my location. I can say, you know what? That's not where I want to be mapped. Let's go to this person and map that one. And you'll notice that it dynamically edits it with no coding. And this actually, I could be adding this dynamic behavior. So when I click on it, it would bring up a window. It's unlimited what you can do. So it's really powerful for you to create these really quick and think of that like your customer goes, great, I'd love to see my clients on a map. Boom, within a matter of a few minutes, you can be adding that functionality to your application. So the last thing I want to talk about before I hand it over to Q&A is this. Once you've built this, it's looking good, it's working in my environment, but how do I actually test and deploy it? So the first thing I want to show you is that if you'll notice I have a button up here called Remote Test. And if I click on that button and I do a full preview and I say display QR code, you'll notice that it puts a little QR code there. And you won't be able, you could scan this, but it won't work. But what this allows me to do is actually take my iPad or my phone, point it at the screen, and literally run this application on my mobile device right here in front of my computer. So it allows you to test on the target platform right there. But let me go ahead and show you this. The other thing I want to show you how to do is that the other is when you're ready to go to publish or production, you have this button up here called Publish. So you click Publish, and actually let me change one thing here. I'm going to change this title to Hello Webinar Team, just so you know I'm not faking this. So I've got this Hello Webinar Team. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'm going to click Publish, and I've got a profile where I can publish it up to my server. I have an issue with the network where I'm at. Normally I just say publish to server and it goes up there, but I have an issue with the network where I'm in doing the demonstration for today. So I'm going to get a lag time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let me go ahead and cancel that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just manually copy this, and I apologize, I have to do this today because of this network. But pretend I hit that button and I hit webinar and I put it up on my server. So I've gone there, and in a moment it's going up there. So now if you go to the following web address, and we'll do this in front of us, giantkillerdemo.com/webinar, you're going to actually see that application I just built working live. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my browser, and I'm going to open that up. And you're going to, and I'm doing this in here, but it works better if you're on there. But you're going to notice I'm running now off my productions or my test server. And I've got Hello Webinar Team, so you know I'm not faking this here. You'll notice that I'm running in my web browser. I have all the functionality that's available here. So you can click there. It's probably going to be a little slow now because we probably already have about 5 or 6 people or a bunch of people, but everything works there and I can actually run it directly off of my webinar server immediately. And all the functionality, you can play with it now or play with it a little bit later. But the reason I wanted to show you that is once you've built this, it only takes a matter of minutes to deploy it. And if I want to turn this into a native application, I have this magic button called Phone Gap. And when I click on that button, it opens up here. And when you have a Phone Gap, you can literally click on what platforms you want to build for, click Save and Upload to Phone Gap Build. And I wonder if this will work in my network, but let's give this a try here. Let's see if it can touch it. I'm doing a test here. I'm in kind of a strange network stuff. It's done that. I've actually literally uploaded that app to Phone Gap. You're seeing a little bit of, it's currently pending right now. And so you'll notice in a few moments when it refreshes here, it's going to tell me whether it's built it or not. And let's see if it's done it. Yep. You'll notice now that my application is complete. So I literally showed you with 2 clicks how to take my demonstration working on my local machine and create a phone gap. And what I'm going to do is when I click on there, it opens up a QR code. And if you can scan this, good luck. I'm not sure, but you can put an Android device right here, scan that QR code, download it. It's going to be an unsecured because I'm not on the Google Play, and literally run that application on your mobile platform in a matter of minutes after completing it. So you get the ultimate in fidelity there. And I know this works. We did this yesterday, so it does it. So I'm going to leave this up for a few moments here. But that's kind of the end of my sort of presentation. We have about 12 to 15 minutes for a Q&A for open things. But the important things for you to understand is I was able to build a mobile application using point and click, but with full feature and capability, and be able to deploy it both as in real time. You saw me deployed it to my server and deploy it to a Android app in a matter of 45 minutes. And just think of what you could do and the things you can build when you have this technology in your hand. So with that, Dave, I'm going to go ahead and leave this picture right here. So if anyone who wants to try that, they can. It is demo, so no guarantees, but it does. It will work there. But I'm going to hand that back to you, Dave, and you can take it from here.
Great. So we have questions and lots of them.
Good.
So
I thought there would be.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, let's just start with sort of an easy one, which is not necessarily easy, but how long does it take to learn this? James asks.
Very good question. I'm going to give you my history and now the way. I started learning Alpha about 2 years ago. And when I did it, I kind of did it on a self-paced. I used videos and other things there. And it probably took me about a couple weeks to get, kind of my feet under me, and then a couple months to get good, and then about 6 months to get really good. But now there's a better way to handle that. We actually have a sister company, or a third-party company called Twin Peaks Research, who does boot camps, and they literally can get you up to speed on both web and mobile development of applications in about a week. And then it probably takes, give yourself a few more weeks to kind of get really going, and then within a month or two you're going to be rocking and rolling. So definitely you want to check out Twin Peaks Research, because they have these boot camps. They're delivered via in person, it's like that week-long boot camp, or remotely. And what you're going to find out is it will dramatically accelerate the time it takes for you to get this under your kind of to internalize it and really start building it. But since it's codeless, you're going to actually be able to really put things together very quickly, and you'll find it's a really enjoyable experience.
Great. A couple just housekeeping things. Someone asked if they could have a copy of your slides. And
sure, I'd be glad. I'll send those to you, Dave, and you
Great.
can put them along with the video replay.
Right, and there will be a recording. It'll go up in the next couple of days, and you should look for it under alphasoftware.com/events, EVENTS. Here's a question. It has to do with, can Alpha Anywhere generate PDFs and then attach them to emails?
The answer is yes. What's very powerful about Alpha Anywhere is that one of the neat things, well, and I keep saying that, but one of the things you need to realize about Alpha Anywhere is that it's a manifestation and a maturity of a technology that's been around for a while. Alpha originally started as a desktop database application. And what's great is all that capability. So built into Alpha is a full report generator. And I'm going to go show you real quick. It'll only take a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new report. I'm going to use my SQL data source. I'm going to connect to my connection, which is my MySQL database. I'm going to select customers, and let me go ahead and bring in all columns, and I'm going to click Finish. So I'm going to create this report, and let's say I'm going to put the company name, contact title, and address on there. And I could group them, set my reports, and then do a preview. And now I immediately have a report built for me, and that's all built into the system, so I don't have to use a third party. Now what's really cool about that is that now what I can do is I can literally publish this report along with my application, and what it will do is it will render it as in HTML, but also allow me to export it as Excel, PDF, and Word. And I also have the hooks in the system, so I can add an action JavaScript to actually create this report as a PDF, attach it to an email, and send it to someone. And that's literally within 10 minutes I could show you how to do that, and it's bulletproof. But what's really cool is by having the report generator built into it, and that report generator understands the rest of the system, you can put together a lot of very complex, very powerful reports. They render in HTML on your web and your mobile, so they're extremely fast, but you can do it as PDF and Excel and things like that. And if you're doing any kind of financial application, the export to Excel, your clients will love you. That's a huge, huge win for them because they love Excel and they want to get that data into that form. And again, all this could be secured with the security framework, so you can limit who can do what reports, what can be in reports, who can access them, who can export them. All that's controlled by you, the developer.
That's great. By the way, just a couple of comments, one from Ernest, one from Michael, who both said that the QR code that you posted is working just fine on their Android devices. So they're
I knew that.
Nice work.
Yeah, I had no doubt at all, gentlemen.
Yeah, no doubt
You
it
don't
would
even
work.
say that. Thank you. Well, and all kidding aside, it's not because I'm a phenomenal developer. I mean, it's because the alpha development team has made my life, especially Bob Moore, who did the integration with PhoneGap. He treated himself as a user, meaning like he would have to consume it. So he tried to make it as super simple as possible because he wants to focus on functionality and not all the process muckety muck that you need to do to create the mobile app. So kudos go out to Bob Moore and the development team.
Another question, which is sort of related to the previous email question, which is just, can Alpha Anywhere generate dynamic email messages?
Yes, there is a command, and let me see, Alpha Anywhere Gmail. There's actually a video that shows you how to do that, but you also have, oh, actually, it's a Gmail function. Let me go to function. There's actually a command, and it's on here in here, but what you can do is actually dynamically generate the email, meaning what's the title, what's the return address, etc. You're not limited to Gmail. You can use in the SMTP server, but you can actually create the email programmatically in code and then submit it out. Which is very powerful. And if you're on the mobile platform, the PhoneGap integration allows you to actually, with permission, access the user's contacts on their mobile platform. So you can actually query their contacts and then show it to them. They can click on it, and then you can programmatically send an email out to that contact from your mobile app. So it's very easy, very flexible. It's literally 4 or 5 lines of code that are done there.
James asks, what backend languages does the system build on?
Very good point. The alpha ships with a built-in language, and let's say I wanted to take a button here, and just to kind of show you how this would work, and I want to add to that button like an AJAX callback. I won't actually go into details here. Alpha has what's called a language called XBasic. So you can actually create an XBasic function here that runs on the server that can munge data, query databases, and etc. But coming pretty soon and in the pre-development phase is the ability to actually use JavaScript as a back-end language, because we actually use the Google JavaScript engine. So right now you would use XBasic, which is a variant of BASIC, very easy to use, very rich language to allow you to do those emails and those queries of databases. But also we'll have in the near future the ability to actually use JavaScript to write munging code and whatever you need to do from within the system. So those are the current ones, and they're very straightforward to use. There's a huge amount of documentation and videos, and the Twin Peaks research actually dives into that to show you how to create like a server side and a mobile side kind of working together, how all that ties together so you can create these very powerful applications.
Great. Here's a question about multimedia. Can I transmit a voice recording and images to the server and retrieve them on another device, such as a laptop?
The answer is yes and yes. First, when you're doing any PhoneGap work, I'm going to scroll down here. You'll notice that I have required PhoneGap core plugins. We have things such as media capture, the camera, the battery, etc. So we have all the hooks for you to allow you to capture pictures and media, whether it's been pre-recorded on that mobile platform or not. And then within the user interface, if I go back into my user interface, we actually have a rich set of controls that allow you to do, where is that? Let me find that real quick. Oh, it's under other controls here. We could show images, but more importantly, where is that? I'm sorry, I'm jumping around everybody, bear with me. Oh, we have like image controls. And also, if I go back and create a new control, let me go ahead and create a new one. Let me go back to here. We have a whole bunch of pre-made components, for instance, a video player, an image gallery, etc. And these literally are point and click, point to where you want them. So you not only have the capture capability on the mobile platform, which can save either as files or into the database, but we also have the rich controls on the user interface to be able to show the video and the image and audio and things like that. So long-winded answer, but we have both components on the mobile side and on the website to do all the above.
Thank you. Another question is Alpha Anywhere available for the Mac platform?
The actual in product, i.e., works in a web browser, so it works on the Mac. The development system is Windows only. And in this case, what you're seeing here is I'm actually running this on Parallels on a MacBook Pro, and it works great. It's extremely fast and is a really sweet little system. So at this time, we don't have the development system on the Mac, but any of your deployments will work fine in the Safari browser, etc. So you're never going to have to worry about that. It works great on the iPad and iPhone when it generates iOS applications. But you will need a development system. And in this case, I use Parallels, not that this is an ad for them, along with Windows 7 as my development environment with the Alpha Anywhere development platform.
I actually had the same setup on my system as well, and it works extremely well. Here's a couple questions just about general licensing and costs. The first one is, how much does it cost to become a developer in Alpha Anywhere? Our current price is $99 a month or $1,000 a year. There is a less expensive option if you send email to sales@alphasoftware.com that includes just the developer, and they'll tell you what the limitations are on that. Basically, and also another question was about the ability to build multiple applications. The way that we have it structured, your application server can actually support multiple applications. It just depends on how much use they're getting. So there's no actual limit, according to our license, to the number of applications you want to put up on a single application server, or the number of applications that you want to develop using your developer edition. So it's an unlimited license in that respect. When you start moving to a multiple server situation for extremely heavy load and start getting to load balancers, then extra application servers will need to be purchased for that, and they become discounted as you purchase more of them. So that's the short answer.
Two quick comments on that real
Yeah.
quick. First is when we use PhoneGap to build the solution, there's a free account for PhoneGap for your first application, but when you start building multiple applications, it's very minimal, and it's extremely minimal cost kind of structure. But double check on if you're going to deploy like 5 or 10 different mobile apps through PhoneGap, there is a licensing requirement for them, but nothing big. And last but not least is I'm surprised, Dave, you said if you ask what it is, you can't afford it. I'm surprised that wasn't the regular response, but that's just me. That's just me. I'm out in California, so I'm kind of used to that, kind of response.
What? Actually, I think I've already asked this one. Here's a good one. This has to do with forms and multiple devices. Is it possible to adjust a form in a way so that it'll fit on all devices without having to specify each one? So
the answer is yes. There is a really powerful feature built into Alpha Anywhere called responsive design. And so I'm back on my UX component here. and I've been kind of mainly focusing on an iOS kind of application. But if I go to the properties on this UX control, and I go to something here called responsive layout settings, what is built into it is I can actually go in here and add rules. So let's call it iOS, where I can actually detect if this is an iPhone, an iPad, Windows, etc., and then in real time update parameters of the user interface to sort of optimize it for that platform, including if I'm in a landscape mode or a portrait mode, if I have a mouse available, etc. So we have a very powerful set of sort of, we call it responsive design, where you can detect the platform you're on and make adjustments to the look and feel, to the layout of it, etc. So you don't have to create separate applications for every target platform. You basically create your functional capability on one platform and then come in and use the responsive layout capability to then tweak it for each of the target platforms so it looks great. And in fact, one of the most powerful capabilities I love about the system is that if I go to properties, let's say I show you this working preview right now, you're going to notice that I'm in kind of an iOS kind of, actually iOS 6 format. But if I go into design and I click on style name and I select my style name, I have some pre-made ones for Android, for iOS 7, and what's great is you can use your own CSS. You can custom craft it to look at it any way you want. So let's say I click Android Light. I now go into my working preview. The overall look and feel of my application, the color, the background, what the buttons look like, etc., modify, just boom, I'm done in CSS. And so what you can do is actually create your own CSS. You can buy off-the-shelf CSS templates and reuse those. And it gives you a huge amount of ability to make sure that your application matches your client or your branding at all times. So you get that experience there. And this CSS can be dynamically changed while it runs so that if you want to change it to make it like look more like an Android app than an iOS app or a Windows mobile app, the system will detect that and give you the hooks to be able to do that. And it allows you complete control over the look and feel and branding of your application. We don't dictate that. You do.
Great. So we have like 35 questions left, and we are out of time. Let me see if we could just
We'll
sneak
be
one more
here,
question in.
but bring them. Let's record them, and we can start out with those questions next week right off the bat.
I think
So
that's an excellent idea. So all of
yeah,
your questions will be saved, and we will get to them in the next webinar. For specific questions that you need to have answered more quickly, please send an email to guides, Guides, at alphasoftware.com. Dion, I don't know how tight you're on time. I was wondering if you could take one last question, if
yes,
that's not
by all means.
great. And we have a few sort of along this lines, and it has to do with Microsoft Access. Just wondering, how do you go about importing Microsoft Access into Alpha Anywhere, or how do you use it with Alpha Anywhere?
Good point. Actually, don't need to import it. When I create my application, I notice that there's sort of a trend. This kind of little step back is that when people are migrating from Access, and I think this is a really good strategy, is first is you don't want to recreate the whole wheel. So you don't have to take your Access and convert it or do anything else. If I click on Tools and Connection Strings, I can actually create a new connection, and I'm building a connection here and connect directly to my Access database as it exists. So as far as the tables and the views and everything else, I can consume those within Alpha natively, meaning I can just start using them. Now I understand there's a fair amount of VBA in there, and that's another issue we have to look at. But initially you don't have to import it, you just start using your Access database directly, and then you look at the VBA. But what's really cool about that is once you get to the point you go, you know what, okay, now I want to move on to MySQL or MariaDB or SQL Server or anything like that, then I can merely move my table structures and data over to those using a third-party tool like Navicat or even some of the built-in tools from SQL Server, etc. And then all I need to do is change this connection string to point at my new database, and boom, the application works. So I don't have to recreate all that front-end logic and interface and everything else, because it's sort of disconnected or giving you a level of indirection from the database to the user interface, so you're not stuck with that kind of tight relationship. So it gives you an enormous amount of flexibility. So the strategy is I try to use it natively right out of the gate just to get my application up and running, and then start addressing things like the VBA logic maybe you've created. And then once you're comfortable, then you can start migrating it onto a modern SQL platform that gives you a lot more security, speed, responsiveness, and all the other things that will buy you for that, and even scalability. And that Access database, by the way, can be local here, but then when you're deploying it, you can actually put your production Access database on the server, and when it's running on the server, point to that database versus your development one on your local machine. So I hope that answers that.
That is excellent. Thank you very much. So that's all the time we have. I'm very pleased by the response today. It's one of our bigger webinars. So thank you very much, Dion, for participating. Thanks for Jerry and Steve for standing by in case we needed them. And we will get to all of your questions in the next couple of days. Again, you can send additional ones to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, at alphasoftware.com. A recording of this presentation will be available in the next day or two, and you'll be able to find that at alphasoftware.com/events, which is where we keep our other webinars as well. On behalf of Alpha Software, I'm Dave McCormick, and I'd like to say thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you at a future webinar.